The sound of muted alarms pierced through the dim interior of Jax's cramped quarters. He jolted awake, his heart racing before his mind had fully emerged from sleep. His hand instinctively reached for the control panel embedded in the wall beside his bunk. "Bolt, silence," he mumbled, his voice still thick with sleep. The alarms cut off abruptly, replaced by the soft mechanical whirring of a spherical AI unit activating in the corner of the room. Bolt's outer shell glowed a gentle blue as it hovered upward, its single optical sensor focusing on Jax. "Another nightmare?" The AI's voice carried that familiar tone of pragmatic concern mixed with mild sarcasm. "That makes 17 this month. Your subconscious seems determined to break last month's record." Jax swung his legs over the edge of the bunk and ran a hand over his face, feeling the rough stubble and the familiar ridge of the scar that ran from his right temple to his jawline. "Thanks for keeping count," he muttered, reaching for the half-empty bottle of synthetic whiskey on his nightstand. Bolt floated closer, its optical sensor adjusting. "Drinking before breakfast. An excellent start to another promising day on the illustrious edge of civilized space." Jax ignored the comment and took a swig directly from the bottle. The harsh liquid burned down his throat, chasing away the last fragments of the nightmare. Though nightmare wasn't quite the right word. More like a replay, a perfect recollection of the day everything went wrong. The day his ship, the Horizon Breaker, broke apart in the cold vacuum of space, taking his crew, his reputation, and his future with it. "Any messages?" Jax asked, knowing the answer would likely be the same as it had been for months. "Only the usual automated payment reminders from the station administration," Bolt replied. "Oh, and a particularly creative collection notice from that Rigelian arms dealer you still owe for the shield modulator. He suggests several anatomically implausible things you might do with yourself should payment not be forthcoming." Jax grunted and stood up, stretching his tall frame in the confined space. At 38 standard years, his body still maintained the wiry strength of his military days, but new aches reminded him daily that his prime was behind him. His once regulation neat, dark hair now hung past his shoulders, streaked with premature gray. "What thrilling cargo hauling opportunities await us today?" he asked, pulling on the worn jumpsuit that served as his everyday uniform here on Outpost Epsilon 9, a neglected way station at the edge of recognized space. Bolt's spherical form bobbed slightly in what Jax had come to recognize as the AI equivalent of a shrug. The usual assortment of questionable gigs that no reputable pilot would touch. Though I must say, the selection grows increasingly desperate with each passing. The AI stopped abruptly, its blue glow flickering momentarily to amber. "What?" Jax asked, instantly alert. "Incoming transmission," Bolt said, sounding genuinely surprised. "Non-standard frequency. Heavily encrypted. Source unknown." "But," Bolt's voice trailed off, unusual for the typically verbose AI. "But what?" Jax pressed, feeling a familiar tension creep up his spine. The encryption signature bears similarities to the secure communications protocol used by the Horizon Breaker. Jax froze, the bottle halfway to his lips. "That's impossible. Everyone aboard died except me, and the ship's systems were completely destroyed. Nevertheless, the similarities are unmistakable. Shall I attempt decryption?" Jax hesitated only briefly. "Do it." Bolt's shell rotated slowly as it processed the encrypted message. Jax paced the small room, trying to tamp down the sudden hope that flared in his chest. Maybe someone else had survived after all. Maybe it was Mara, his navigator, or Kendrick, the brilliant young engineer who had been on his first deep space assignment. But even as the hope rose, Jax crushed it with bitter experience. He'd seen the explosion, felt the ship tear itself apart. No one could have survived that. "Decryption complete," Bolt announced. "Audio only. Significant degradation." "Play it," Jax ordered, bracing himself. At first, there was only static, then fragments of a voice. Neither Mara's nor Kendrick's emerged through the noise. "Jax, if you're alive, the artifact wasn't destroyed. The stillness holds answers. Cygnus X2, coordinates attached. Come alone. Chance 4. Redemption. The message cut off abruptly, returning to static before Bolt terminated the playback. That's it, Jax demanded. The remainder was corrupted beyond recovery, Bolt replied. However, there were indeed coordinates embedded in the transmission. Jax sat heavily on his bunk. The stillness? On Cygnus X2. His throat felt suddenly dry. That's inside the interdiction zone. Indeed, Bolt's tone grew even more sardonic. The stillness, a mysterious region on an uninhabited planet where ships disappear, physics goes on holiday, and all manner of colorful rumors circulate about guardians and watchers, interdicted by every governmental and corporate authority in settled space. Strictly forbidden to all vessels. The AI's shell spun faster. In other words, precisely the sort of place you'd be foolish enough to consider visiting. The artifact, Jax murmured, ignoring Bolt's commentary. It survived. The artifact had been the unofficial name among the crew for the strange object they'd been contracted to transport. A crystalline structure about the size of a human fist, encased in a containment unit that took up half their cargo hold. They'd never been told what it was, only that it was classified and valuable. When the Horizon Breaker exploded, the official investigation concluded that the artifact had been destroyed with the ship. The chances of survival for any physical object at the epicenter of that explosion are approximately. I don't want the odds, Bolt. Jax cut him off. I want to know who sent this message. Can you trace it? Not with the equipment available on this charming outpost, Bolt replied. The transmission appears to have been bounced through multiple relays, some of which utilize deprecated systems that shouldn't even be operational. Jax stood up and began gathering his meager possessions. We need a ship. I beg your pardon? A ship, Bolt. Something that can get us to Cygnus X2. The AI's shell actually stopped spinning for a moment. You cannot be serious. The stillness is forbidden for very good reasons, the foremost being that nothing that enters has ever been confirmed to exit. The secondary being that it's patrolled by automated interdiction drones programmed to fire upon any vessel that approaches. Someone got in to plant that message, Jax countered, stuffing clothes into a duffel bag. Someone who may very well be setting a trap, Bolt argued. Have you considered that this could be an elaborate ruse? Perhaps by one of the numerous individuals or organizations who still hold you responsible for the loss of the Horizon Breaker and its valuable cargo. Jax paused, his hand resting on the framed photo of his former crew, the only personal item he displayed in his quarters. It mentioned redemption, Bolt. Ah yes, that most irrational of human motivations, the AI side, its tone softening slightly. Do you really believe that whatever answers may lie in the stillness will somehow absolve you of what happened 3 years ago? Jax tucked the photo into his bag. I don't know, but it's the first lead I've had in 3 years. And it mentioned the artifact specifically. He zipped the bag closed with finality. I have to go. Bolt's shell dimmed momentarily, its version of resignation. Might I point out that, leaving aside the considerable dangers of the stillness itself, we are currently lacking the rather essential component required for interplanetary travel, namely a spacecraft. A grim smile crossed Jax's face. I've got that covered. Remember that Corellian smuggler who couldn't pay his repair bill last month? Tucker? The one who left his decrepit excuse for a ship as collateral. That's the one. Old Tucker's XJ-88 isn't much to look at, but Kendrick, my engineer on the Horizon Breaker, always said those old models were built like fortresses, simple enough systems that they can run even through heavy interference. The XJ-88 is 3 decades obsolete, has questionable life support, and radar signature masking that wouldn't fool a child's toy scanner, Bolt protested. It's perfect, Jax declared, shouldering his bag. No one will expect anyone to be stupid enough to approach the stillness in something that primitive. A compelling argument against our survival, Bolt muttered, reluctantly hovering after Jax as he strode toward the door. May I at least point out that the statistical probability of our reaching Cygnus X2 alive, let alone returning from the stillness, is approximately. Save it for the journey, Bolt, Jax interrupted, his voice taking on a determination that had been absent for 3 long years. "We got a ship to steal." The XJ-88, which Tucker had unimaginatively named Lucky Star, looked anything but lucky as Jax guided it through the edges of the Cygnus system. The ship's hull was a patchwork of repairs. Its engines wheezed like an asthmatic beast, and the life support system cycled through unpredictable temperature fluctuations that left Jax alternately sweating and shivering. Primary navigation systems failing, Bolt announced from its interface with the ship's outdated computer. Backup systems responding at approximately 27% efficiency. In short, we're flying blind in another 10 minutes. Jax tightened his grip on the manual controls. "We won't need navigation once we're close." "Enough. The stillness will make itself known." "Your confidence is as misplaced as it is terrifying," Bolt replied, but continued monitoring the systems without further comment. The journey had taken 4 days, longer than expected due to the ship's limitations and the necessity of taking a circuitous route to avoid the regular patrol patterns of automated interdiction vessels. Jax had spent most of that time studying what little verified information existed about the stillness in Cygnus X2. The planet itself was unremarkable, a rocky world with a thin, unbreathable atmosphere, situated at the outer edge of its star's habitable zone. It would have been a candidate for terraforming if not for the stillness, a region covering approximately 200 square kilometers of the planet's northern hemisphere. The first exploratory mission to discover the anomaly had vanished entirely. The second, more cautious mission had lost half its members and returned with incomprehensible readings and equally incomprehensible stories. After 3 more disastrous attempts to study the phenomenon, the Interplanetary Authority had declared Cygnus X too forbidden to all travel and established the Automated Defense Network to enforce the interdiction. That had been almost 70 years ago. Since then, the stillness had passed into the realm of legend among spacers, a place where reality itself broke down, where time flowed differently, and where something ancient and other watched from the shadows. Proximity alert. Bolt's voice cut through Jax's thoughts. Automated defense platform at 11 Mark III. It has not activated its targeting systems yet, but we are well within its sensor range. Jax adjusted their course slightly, keeping the bulk of Cygnus X2 between them and the defense platform. Tucker said this ship has a smuggler's signature scrambler. Is it working? If by working, you mean creating an electronic signature so chaotic it might be mistaken for background radiation by older scanning systems, then yes, Bolt replied dryly. It appears the defense platform's targeting algorithms are struggling to classify us as a valid target. However, I wouldn't count on this confusion lasting once we make our approach to the planet's surface. Jax nodded grimly. We'll have to be quick. What's our best entry vector to reach the coordinates from message? Bolt's shell spun rapidly as it calculated. Assuming we wish to minimize our time in sight of the defense networks, I recommend an approach angle of 173 degrees relative to the planetary axis. This will allow us to utilize a mountain range for partial sensor coverage during descent. Do it, Jax ordered, transferring control to Bolt for the precision calculations required. The ship shuddered violently as it began its descent, the hull heating up as they entered the thin upper atmosphere of Cygnus X2. Warning lights flashed across the console. We've been spotted, Jax muttered, watching as multiple defense platforms adjusted their positions. Time to impact. At current velocity, surface landing in 7 minutes, 12 seconds, Bolt reported. Automated defense response estimated in 5 minutes, 30 seconds. Can we go faster? Not without significant risk of structural failure, Bolt warned. The ship's hull integrity is already compromised in multiple sections. Reroute emergency power to the shields. Focus on the aft sections, Jax ordered, taking manual control again. And hold on to something. I'm interfaced with the ship's systems. I am, quite literally, holding on to everything, Bolt replied testily. Jax ignored the AI's complaint and pushed the ship's nose down, accelerating their descent at a rate that sent warning alarms blaring throughout the cockpit. The mountain range below grew rapidly larger in the view screen, its jagged peaks threatening to tear the ship apart if his timing was off by even a few seconds. Defense platforms have obtained weapons lock, Bolt reported, its usually sardonic tone now clipped and urgent. Impact imminent in 10-9. Jax waited until the last possible moment before pulling back on the controls, sending the ship skimming over the peaks of the mountains. Behind them, energy weapons lanced through the space they had occupied moments before. 4 minutes to designated coordinates, Bolt announced as Jax weaved the ship through the mountain range. Defense platforms attempting to recalculate firing solutions. Another blast of energy struck just behind them, closer this time, sending a cascade of warnings across the ship's systems. Shields at 38%, Bolt reported. At this rate, we will not survive to reach our destination. We don't need to, Jax replied, his eyes fixed on the sensor readings. Look ahead, we're approaching the boundary of the stillness. The sensor showed a shimmering distortion in the atmosphere, like heat waves rising from baked ground, but far more pronounced and utterly unnatural in its geometric precision. It formed a perfect dome over the coordinates they were approaching. I strongly advise against entering the distortion field, Bolt said. Sensor readings are becoming increasingly erratic. Quantum fluctuations are off the charts. This is consistent with the few reliable reports from previous encounters with the stillness. Another energy blast struck the ship, this time grazing the port side. The vessel lurched violently, and several systems went offline at once. Port engine failing, Bolt reported. Hull breach in cargo section. Emergency sealants deploying. Jax's hands flew over the controls, compensating for the failing engine. No choice now. We're going in. The ship hurtled toward the shimmering boundary. Behind them, the defense platforms fired again, but the energy beams seemed to bend and dissipate as they approached the edge of the distortion. Boundary impact in 3, 2. Bolt's voice took on an unusually solemn tone. It's been an honor serving with you, Jax, despite your consistently poor decision-making. The ship crossed the threshold of the stillness. Instantly, everything changed. The alarms fell silent. The vibration of the damaged engine ceased. Even the sound of Jax's own breathing seemed muted, distant. Outside the view screen, the landscape looked the same, rocky, barren, but somehow profoundly different, as if painted with colors that had no names. Bolt, Jax called, his voice sounding strange in his own ears. No response came from the AI. The interface where Bolt had been connected glowed with a soft, pulsing light, but remained silent. The ship continued forward, no longer under Jax's control, drifting as if carried by an unseen current. The sensor readings flickered wildly before going dark altogether. The navigation system displayed coordinates that changed randomly with each passing second. Through the view screen, Jax could see they were descending toward a valley. Unlike the barren mountains surrounding it, the valley floor was covered with something that resembled vegetation, phosphorescent plants that seemed to sway despite the absence of wind. The entire scene was bathed in an eerie quiet, a stillness so profound it felt like a physical presence pressing against the ship. As they descended further, Jax noticed structures on the valley floor. Strange, angular formations that could have been natural but felt deliberate in their arrangement. Pillars of stone that glowed with the same phosphorescence as the plant life, arranged in complex geometric patterns. Then, without warning, the ship's remaining engine cut out completely. Jax had just enough time to strap himself into the pilot's seat before the vessel dropped like a stone, plummeting the last 100 meters to the surface. It struck the ground with bone-jarring force, skidding across the valley floor before coming to rest against one of the stone pillars. The impact should have been fatal, or at least seriously injurious, but Jax found himself shaken but largely unhurt. The ship's systems were completely dead now, the emergency lights providing the only illumination in the cockpit. Bolt, he called again, unbuckling from his seat. System restart. Emergency protocols. A faint flicker came from Bolt's interface. Then the AI's spherical form detached itself shakily from the ship's console. Its usually bright blue glow was dimmed to a pale flicker, and when it spoke, its voice sounded distorted. All systems. Malfunctioning. Internal diagnostics. Cannot complete. External environment. Defies logical analysis. The AI's shell wavered in the air. In simpler terms, everything's broken and I don't know why. Jax moved to the storage locker and retrieved an environment suit. The atmospheric readings before system's failure had indicated that while the air outside was technically breathable, it contained high levels of unknown particulates and compounds. Better to be safe. Can you still move? He asked Bolt as he sealed the suit. Barely, the AI replied, its shell wobbling as it hovered. My gravitational stabilizers are functioning at minimal capacity. Movement is challenging. Stay close to me then, Jax said, retrieving a portable scanner and a pulse pistol from the locker. We need to find the source of that transmission. The ship's airlock cycled open with a wheeze of protesting hydraulics, and Jax stepped out onto the surface of Cygnus X-2 into the heart of the stillness. His first impression was silence, a silence so absolute it felt like a physical presence pressing against his eardrums. His second impression was of wrongness, subtle but pervasive, as if the normal rules of perspective and dimension had been slightly but fundamentally altered. The luminescent plants he had seen from above grew in spiraling patterns across the valley floor, their glow pulsing in a rhythm that seemed almost like breathing. The stone pillars that had appeared random from the air now clearly formed some kind of vast circuit or symbol when viewed from the ground. And the ground itself seemed to ripple occasionally, like water disturbed by distant impact. Scanner readings? Jax asked quietly, his voice sounding flat and lifeless in the strange atmosphere. Bolt, hovering unsteadily by his shoulder, made a sound like a digital sigh. Utterly useless. According to this device, we are simultaneously experiencing temperatures of absolute 0 and several thousand degrees. Gravity is reading at both 10 times and 1/10 standard, and there are energy signatures that the scanner cannot even classify. Jax nodded grimly and began walking toward the center of the stone formation, where the patterns in the glowing vegetation converged. Each step felt slightly wrong, as if the distance between his feet and the ground was not quite what his brain expected it to be. The coordinates from the message indicated a location approximately 500 meters in that direction, Bolt said, indicating a path between two particularly tall pillars. As they walked, Jax noticed other oddities. Rocks that changed color as he passed, shifting from dull gray to iridescent blue, then back again. Patches of ground where his footsteps left no prints, and others where they caused ripples to spread outward like drops in a pond. And most disturbing, occasional glimpses of what looked like shadows moving at the corner of his vision, gone whenever he turned to look directly. Bolt, he said softly, are you recording all this? Attempting to, the AI replied. However, my storage systems are experiencing difficulties. It's as if the data keeps changing after being recorded. They passed between the tall pillars and entered a clearing that took Jax's breath away. The space was perfectly circular, surrounded by stone columns that glowed with shifting patterns of light. The ground was covered in what looked like liquid glass, perfectly still and reflecting the strange sky above, which now seemed filled with stars that moved in deliberate patterns. And in the center of the clearing stood a woman. At least, she had the general shape of a woman, tall and slender, with limbs that seemed slightly too long for human proportions. Her skin had a faint metallic sheen to it, like burnished silver in moonlight. Her hair floated around her head in defiance of gravity, like liquid mercury. And her eyes, large, violet, and lacking pupils, regarded him with an expression of ancient serenity. She wore what appeared to be a single piece of clothing, a garment that seemed woven from the same phosphorescent material as the plants, clinging to her form while constantly shifting in subtle patterns. Bolt, Jax whispered, his hand instinctively moving toward his pistol. What am I looking at? The AI had gone completely still, its shell not even rotating. I cannot say. Biological scans return nonsensical results. She appears to be simultaneously organic, inorganic, and something else entirely. She simply exists. The woman tilted her head slightly, studying Jax with those pupilless eyes. Then, without her lips moving, Jax heard a voice in his mind, clear, melodic, and somehow both alien and achingly familiar. I have waited, time-scarred one. Bolt's shell actually dropped several inches in apparent shock. This is illogical. The AI stammered, its voice strangely small. The woman, if that's what she was, made no move toward them, maintaining her position in the exact center of the circular clearing. When she spoke, again, Jax realized that Bolt was somehow receiving the communication as well. You have come as the echoes foretold. The wound grows unstable. The choice is fragment. You carry the key. Jax took a cautious step forward, keeping his hand near his weapon. Who are you? Did you send a message that brought me here? A slight smile curved the woman's lips. I am Alara, last keeper of what you call the stillness. I did not send your message. The stillness itself called to you through the scar you carry. Scar. Jax's hand instinctively went to his face. Not of flesh, Alara clarified, her mental voice gentle. Of time. Of possibility. You were torn in the moment your vessel shattered. Part of you died. Part survived. The tear never fully healed. Bolt had recovered enough to hover forward slightly. Are you claiming that the explosion of the Horizon Breaker somehow affected Jax on a temporal level? Alara turned her gaze to the AI, and Jax could have sworn Bolt actually shuddered. Your mechanical companion thinks in limited dimensions, she observed. But yes, that is a simplification of what occurred. The artifact your vessel carried was a fragment of our technology. When it destabilized, it created a resonance with this place, a wound calling to a wound. Jax felt a chill that had nothing to do with the environment suit. You're saying the artifact caused the explosion? That it wasn't an accident or sabotage? It was not designed to exist in your reality without containment, Alara explained. Its purpose was to bridge and stabilize, not to destroy. But was damaged, improperly handled. By who? Jax demanded, anger flaring. Who put that thing on my ship? Alara tilted her head again, her expression suggesting that his question missed some fundamental point. Those who do not understand often seek to control. Names would mean nothing to you. What matters is what happens now. She extended a hand, not toward Jax, but indicating the landscape around them. This place, the stillness, is a wound in reality created long ago by my people. We sought to master the flow of time and possibility. We failed. The result was this, a pocket where shattered timelines and broken possibilities collect. I remain as its keeper, preventing its collapse or expansion. Your people, Bolt interjected. There are historical records of a pre-human civilization in this sector, but nothing concrete. Are you claiming to be millions of years old? Time has little meaning here, Alara replied simply. I have existed as keeper since the wound opened. I will exist until it closes or until it consumes all. And what does this have to do with me? Jax asked, struggling to process the implications of her words. You bear a resonance with this place now, time-scarred one. The artifact that destroyed your vessel was attempting to return here to its source. In its destruction, it marked you. Her violet eyes seemed to look through Jax rather than at him. You may be the catalyst that can change what has been unchanging for eons. She gestured toward a path that hadn't been visible moments before. Gulme, I will show you the nature of choice. Jax hesitated, years of hard-won caution warring with a strange, compelling certainty that this was why he had been drawn here. This is unwise, Bolt warned quietly. We know nothing about her, this place, or her intentions. Logic dictates a strategic retreat to assess the situation. If we could retreat, Jax replied under his breath. The ship is wrecked, Bolt, and something tells me the defense platforms would still be waiting if we somehow fixed it. I will not harm you, Alara's voice whispered in their minds. What must be done requires your willing participation. After a moment's further hesitation, Jax nodded. "Lead the way." Alara turned and moved along the newly appeared path, her feet seeming to hover just above the ground. Jax followed, with Bolt reluctantly trailing behind. The path took them deeper into the valley, through landscapes that defied explanation. They passed through a field of crystalline structures that reflected not their physical forms, but moments from Jax's past. His childhood on the colony world of Helios, his academy days, his first command. Each reflection rippled and changed as they passed, showing not just what had been, but glimpses of what might have been. "The Field of Echoes," Alara explained as Jax paused before a crystal showing himself in an admiral's uniform, something he had once aspired to before choosing the more lucrative path of private shipping. "It collects memories and unrealized possibilities, not just yours, but from all who have ever touched the stillness." They moved on to a place where a river of glowing energy flowed uphill, occasionally leaping into the air in defiance of gravity. Small objects, stones, fragments of unknown materials, even what looked like pieces of technology, floated in the current, sometimes aging and decaying rapidly, other times reverting to pristine condition. The time stream, Alara named it. Be careful not to touch it. For beings bound to linear time, even brief contact can be disorienting. As if to demonstrate her point, Bolt drifted too close to the edge, and a small splash of the energy struck the AI's shell. Instantly, Bolt's form seemed to blur, cycling rapidly through different states, appearing newer and more advanced one moment, then ancient and primitive the next, all while emitting a cacophony of distorted sounds. Jax lunged forward and pulled the AI back from the stream's edge. Bolt's shell gradually stabilized, returning to its normal appearance. "That was illuminating," the AI said weakly. "I experienced every upgrade and degradation simultaneously. I would not recommend it." Beyond the time stream lay what appeared to be a forest, but like nothing that could exist in normal space. The trees were both massive and minute, appearing to shrink as one approached them only to loom larger when viewed peripherally. Their trunks and branches shifted like smoke, and they bore luminescent fruits that pulsed with inner light. As they entered the forest, Jax noticed the vegetation reacting to their presence. When he felt a surge of wonder at the sight, the nearest trees bloomed with dazzling light. When doubt and fear crept in, the branches became thorny and their glow dimmed to an ominous smolder. "The grove of perception," Alara said. "It reflects and amplifies what you bring to it. Your machine companion sees it differently than you do, for its consciousness is structured unlike yours. I perceive it as a series of intersecting code matrices of varying complexity," Bolt confirmed. "Fascinating, but deeply unsettling." As they moved deeper into the strange forest, Alara began to reveal more. "My people were once like yours, curious, ambitious, determined to understand the universe. But we grew arrogant in our knowledge. We believed we could master the flow of time itself, bending it to our will, selecting optimal futures while discarding others." The trees around them darkened at her words, their forms becoming more angular and threatening. "We built great machines that could glimpse the threads of possibility and pull them apart," she continued. "The artifact that destroyed your ship was a component of one such machine, a stabilizer meant to anchor a selected timeline while others were pruned away." "You were trying to change history?" Jax asked, ducking under a branch that seemed to reach for him. "We were trying to perfect it," Alara corrected, "to eliminate suffering, conflict, waste. But we did not understand the true nature of reality. When we activated our greatest creation, it tore a hole between what is and what might have been. The stillness was born, a wound in time where fragments of broken possibilities collect. They emerged from a forest into a vast open space dominated by an enormous structure that defied comprehension. It appeared as a massive crystalline polyhedron, but its angles and dimensions seemed to shift when not directly observed. Energy coursed across its surface in chaotic patterns, and the air around it vibrated with potential. "The heart," Alara said simply, "the center of the wound." the place where all broken possibilities converge. The structure pulsed with increasing intensity as they approached, the energy patterns growing more erratic. Jax could feel something emanating from it, a pull not on his body, but on his mind, his very sense of self. "It's dying," Elara said, and for the first time, Jax heard emotion in her mental voice, a deep sorrow tinged with resignation. "For eons I have maintained balance, prevented collapse. But the wound grows unstable. Without intervention, it will either implode, taking all the collected fragments of possibility with it, or expand beyond control, consuming your reality as it has consumed so many others." "And you think I can help?" Jax asked incredulously. "What could I possibly do about something like this?" "You bear the resonance," Elara explained, turning to face him fully. "The artifact that destroyed your ship created a connection between you and this place. You are like a living key, capable of interacting with the heart in ways I cannot." Bolt, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "You want to use Jax to stabilize this wound in reality, or to release it?" Elara acknowledged. "The choice will be his. I have maintained the stillness for too long. It was never meant to be permanent, only a transition state until a true resolution could be found." A tremor ran through the ground beneath them, and the heart's pulsing grew more intense, more chaotic. Fragments of energy broke free from its surface, spiraling into the air before dissipating. "It grows more unstable," Elara observed. "The resonance of your presence accelerates the process. A decision must be made soon." "What exactly would I have to do?" Jax asked, eyeing the massive structure warily. "You must connect with the heart. Allow your consciousness to interface with it. Once connected, you will understand the choices available." Alara's expression grew solemn. "But I must warn you, the process is dangerous. Many who have tried to interact with the heart have been lost, their consciousness scattered across countless broken possibilities." "Absolutely not," Bolt interrupted. "Jax, this is suicide. We have no verification of anything she's telling us. For all we know, this could be an elaborate trap." Elara regarded the AI with something like compassion. "Your concern for your companion honors you, machine intelligence. But the danger is real regardless of your belief. The heart grows unstable. If it collapses or expands unchecked, you will both be lost anyway." Another, stronger tremor shook the ground. In the distance, they could see the time stream they had passed earlier surging upward in a geyser of temporal energy. "We don't have much time," Jax realized, watching as the strange forest behind them began to warp and twist in unnatural ways. "I can create a stabilizing field around you," Bolt offered reluctantly. "It won't be much protection against whatever that thing is, but it might help maintain your neural coherence if you're determined to do this." Jax nodded gratefully to Bolt. "Do it, and if I don't make it back, get yourself to the ship. Try to repair it. Save yourself." "Don't be dramatic," Bolt replied, but there was an unusual gentleness in its mechanical voice. "I've calculated the odds of our survival too many times to be optimistic, but I've also learned that you have an irritating habit of defying statistical probability." The AI's shell expanded slightly, projecting a faint blue field around Jax as he turned toward the heart and Elara. "What do I do?" he asked the alien woman. "Place your hands upon the heart," she instructed. "Your physical contact will initiate the connection. Then, surrender to what comes. Do not fight the images or sensations. Simply observe, and, when the moment arrives, choose." Jax took a deep breath, checking the seal on his environment suit one last time. Then he stepped forward, approaching the massive crystalline structure with cautious determination. As he drew closer, the chaotic energy patterns on its surface seemed to respond to his presence, swirling toward the point nearest to him. "Good luck, Jax," Bull called from behind him. "Try not to get your consciousness scattered across dimensional planes. It would be terribly inconvenient for me." With a final glance back at the hovering AI, Jax placed his palms flat against the surface of the heart. The contact was like nothing he had ever experienced. There was no sensation of solidity, despite the apparent crystalline nature of the structure. Instead, his hands seemed to sink into it, as if pushing through a membrane. Energy coursed up his arms, not painful, but intensely present, like every nerve ending being activated simultaneously. For a moment, he maintained awareness of his physical self, standing before the massive structure, Elara watching solemnly from nearby, Bolt maintaining the protective field around him. Then, that awareness dissolved, replaced by a cacophony of sensations and images as his consciousness was drawn into the heart itself. He was everywhere and nowhere, experiencing multiple realities simultaneously. He saw the explosion of the horizon breaker, but from countless perspectives, as himself in the pilot's seat, as each crew member at their stations, as the ship itself, as the artifact at the moment of destabilization. He felt the fear, the confusion, the pain of every death, the shock of his own survival. The perspective shifted, and he witnessed versions of himself that had never been. The Jax who died in the explosion. The Jax who prevented it and went on to fame and fortune. The Jax who turned to piracy after the incident. The Jax who never left his home colony. The Jax who became the thing Elara was, bound to a wound in reality. Deeper still, he glimpsed the history of Elara's people, a civilization of breathtaking beauty and technological achievement. He felt their pride as they mastered the forces of nature, their ambition as they reached for control over time itself, their horror as they realized their mistake too late. He experienced Elara's eons of solitude as the last guardian, maintaining the stillness, preventing it from collapsing or expanding, watching civilizations rise and fall beyond its boundaries. He understood now why the artifact had been on his ship. After the fall of her civilization, fragments of their technology had scattered across space and time. Collectors, explorers, and governments had discovered these fragments, recognizing their power, but not their purpose or danger. The particular fragment that had destroyed the Horizon Breaker had been found on a remote moon, acquired by a government research division, and transported in secret for study. They had not known, could not have known, that the artifact would resonate with the stillness, attempting to return to its source. And he understood his own connection to it all. The explosion hadn't just scarred him physically and emotionally. It had marked him on a fundamental level. The artifact's destruction had briefly connected him to the stillness, creating a resonance that Elara had sensed, that the heart had recognized. He was neither chosen nor random, simply altered in a way that made him capable of what came next. The visions and revelations slowed, coalescing into a moment of clarity. Before him, the heart of the stillness presented itself in its true form. Not the physical structure he had touched, but a nexus of possibilities, a swirling vortex of what was, what is, and what might be. And within this vortex, three distinct paths emerged. The first path showed him attempting to repair the heart, forcing the chaotic energies back into alignment, restoring the stability that Elara had maintained for so long. It would be the most dangerous choice, likely to fail, possibly fatal, but if successful, it would preserve the stillness as a contained anomaly separate from normal space-time. The second path showed him releasing the heart, allowing its accumulated energies to disperse safely rather than catastrophically. The stillness would fade, its collected fragments of possibility returning to the void. Elara would be released from her eternal vigil, though what that meant for her existence, the vision did not reveal. The third path was the most radical. Instead of repairing or releasing, it showed him integrating with the heart, using his unique resonance to transform the stillness into something new. Neither wound nor scar, but a bridge, a place where possibilities could be explored rather than merely contained. This path would bind him to the stillness as Elara had been bound, but not in isolation. They would become joint guardians of a transformed realm. As these possibilities became clear, Jax felt the heart's instability increasing. The visions began to fragment, reality threatening to shatter around him. The moment of choice was upon him. A delay was no longer an option. With a clarity that surprised him, Jax embraced the third path. Not repair or release, but transformation. Integration rather than dissolution. A new beginning for himself, for Alara, for the stillness itself. His decision made, Jax felt the heart respond. Energy surged through him, around him, tearing him apart and remaking him simultaneously. For an eternal instant, he existed everywhere within the stillness, feeling every broken possibility, every fragmented timeline. Then, with a soundless explosion of light and power, everything changed. Jax gasped as his consciousness slammed back into his physical body. He staggered backward, barely keeping his footing as the ground beneath him trembled one final time. Bolt hovered anxiously nearby, its protective field flickering but still active. "Jax, are you intact?" Your vital signs were completely unreadable for approximately 2 minutes and 17 seconds. The AI's voice sounded genuinely concerned. Before Jax could respond, the heart of the stillness pulsed with blinding intensity. The chaotic energy patterns that had covered its surface began to reorganize themselves, flowing into new configurations. Not random, but harmonious. Complex patterns that suggested purpose rather than decay. "You chose transformation." Alara's voice came not just to his mind now, but seemed to resonate from the air itself. She stood nearby, but changed, her form more defined, more present somehow, the ethereal quality partially replaced by something more substantial. "I couldn't just fix it or end it," Jax explained, surprised at how clear his thoughts felt despite what he had just experienced. Both seemed like denying the potential here. The landscape around them was changing rapidly. The crystal heart continued its transformation, its light now steady and purposeful rather than chaotic and fading. The tremors ceased, replaced by a sense of settling, of reordering. In the distance, the time stream that had been surging erratically now flowed in a controlled cascade, like a deliberate waterfall of energy. The strange forest rearranged itself into concentric rings of growth, still unearthly, but no longer threatening. "What exactly did you do?" Bolt asked, its shell rotating rapidly as it attempted to process the changes. "He bridged the wound," Alara explained, moving closer to them. "Rather than sealing it or allowing it to collapse, he has transformed it into a nexus, a place where possibilities can coexist and be experienced rather than merely contained." Jax looked down at his hands, feeling different in ways he couldn't quite articulate. "I feel connected to everything here now. I can sense the patterns, the flow." "You have become what I was," Alara said, "but not alone, and not merely a keeper. A guardian of possibility." Her expression softened. "For millennia, I maintained this stillness in isolation, preventing collapse but unable to heal or change it. Now, together, we can shape it into something new." "Together?" Jax questioned, the implications of his choice becoming clearer. "Your resonance with the heart is now permanent," she confirmed. "You are bound to this place, as I have been. But unlike my solitary vigil, we will share this duty. And unlike the stagnation I maintained, we can guide growth and exploration." Bolt had been unusually quiet, its shell hovering at different heights, as if physically expressing its processing. Finally it spoke. "So, to summarize, you've somehow transformed an unstable breach in space-time into a stable nexus of possibilities, bound yourself permanently to this place and this person, and fundamentally altered your own nature in the process." The AI's tone was difficult to read, efficient, if somewhat extreme. Jax couldn't help but laugh, a release of tension that felt strangely right in this transformed place. "I guess that's one way to put it." "The transformation is still ongoing," Alara noted, gesturing to the landscape around them. "What was once the stillness is becoming something new. The anchorage, perhaps, a harbor for possibilities rather than a prison for broken timelines." As if in response to her words, the sky above them shifted, the strange stars rearranging themselves into new constellations. The ground beneath their feet firmed, no longer rippling unpredictably, but moving in gentle, wave-like patterns that seemed almost musical in their rhythm. "What about the interdiction zone?" Jax asked suddenly. "The defense platforms, the prohibition against coming here. In time, those may change, Alara replied. The anchorage will no longer pose the same danger to your reality. It exists now as its own realm, connected but distinct. Those who find their way here will do so because they are meant to, not because they are pulled in by instability. Jax turned to Bolt, suddenly concerned for his longtime companion. Bolt, you don't have to stay. The ship might be reparable. You could return, tell them what happened here. The AI's shell rotated slowly, its optical sensor focusing on Jax. And what exactly would I tell them? That my human has transformed himself into some sort of interdimensional guardian, and is now co-managing a nexus of alternate realities with an ancient alien entity? I'm certain that would go over splendidly with the authorities. You could just say I died in the crash, Jack suggested with a half-smile. Bolt's shell bobbed slightly in consideration. Tempting. The paperwork would certainly be simpler. The AI hovered closer. But I find myself curiously reluctant to abandon you to this strange new existence without proper logical oversight. Someone needs to document this phenomenon, after all. For science. For science, Jax repeated, touched by the AI's roundabout way of expressing loyalty. Besides, Bolt added dryly, where else would I find such an inexhaustible source of unprecedented data? And I suppose I've grown somewhat accustomed to your company, despite your many flaws. Alara observed their exchange with something like amusement. Your machine companion is welcome in the anchorage. All are if they come with open minds and peaceful intent. As the transformation of the landscape continued around them, Jax felt a new sensation, a pulling at his awareness, a sense of presences at the boundaries of the anchorage. Others are coming, Alara confirmed, sensing his realization. Drawn not by chaos now, but by possibility. Some like me, consciousness from fallen civilizations seeking understanding. Some like you, marked by encounters with fragments of forgotten technologies. Some simply seekers of knowledge who have found their way here through intuition or accident. We'll need to prepare, Jax said, surprised at how natural this new role felt already. The guilt and aimlessness that had defined him since the Horizon Breaker's destruction seemed to have transformed along with the stillness. Not gone, but integrated into a new purpose. Indeed, Alara agreed. The anchorage must be made ready for visitors. There is much to do. Bolt rotated rapidly, its equivalent of an exasperated sigh. Naturally, we've barely finished transforming a wound in reality, and already we're discussing hospitality arrangements. Despite its sardonic tone, the AI's shell glowed a bit brighter. I suppose I could develop some rudimentary orientation protocols for new arrivals, assuming they have compatible communication methods. Jax smiled at his old friend's practical approach to an utterly extraordinary situation. Then he turned to survey what had once been the stillness and was now becoming the anchorage, his new home, his new purpose. The valley spread out before them, transformed yet still transforming. The glowing plants now grew in harmonious patterns, pulsing with vibrant life. The stone pillars had rearranged themselves into elegant archways and pavilions, offering shelter and gathering places. The once chaotic energies now flowed in deliberate channels, like rivers of light connecting different regions of this strange realm. And at the center of it all stood the heart, no longer a chaotic polyhedron, but a crystalline spire that reached toward the alien sky, its facets reflecting not just light, but glimpses of countless possibilities, windows into what might have been, what might yet be, what existed beyond conventional understanding. Alara moved to stand beside him, her presence a comforting resonance in his newly expanded awareness. Bolt hovered on his other side, its analytical nature already cataloging the changes, adapting to this new reality with surprising flexibility. What now? Jax asked, though he already felt the answer forming within him. Now, Alara replied, her voice carrying a warmth that had been absent in their first meeting. We build something new from what was broken. We learn. We grow. We guide. Jax nodded, feeling a sense of peace unlike anything he had known since before the destruction of the Horizon Breaker. The past couldn't be changed, he understood that more profoundly than ever. But the future was a realm of possibility. And here, in what had once been forbidden, those possibilities were endless. Well, Bolt interjected, breaking the solemn moment in its inimitable way. At least you finally have steady employment, Jax. Though I must say, guardian of an interdimensional nexus wasn't on my list of career recommendations for you. Jax laughed, the sound carrying strangely in the transformed atmosphere of the anchorage. Life takes unexpected turns, particularly when one crashes into forbidden zones and interfaces with ancient temporal anomalies, the AI agreed dryly. As they stood together, the human marked by time, the ancient guardian, and the sardonic machine intelligence. The first new visitors to the anchorage appeared on the horizon, drawn by the call of possibility and the promise of something extraordinary. The stillness was gone. The anchorage awaited. And for Jax, a new journey had just begun.